Picture a heavy industrial mining operation.
Right, like out in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly. Miles away from any major electrical grid. And to keep all the heavy machinery, the crushers and the smelters running 24 hours a day, the operators rely on these massive, roaring diesel generators.
Yeah, which are just brutal for the environment.
Oh, absolutely. The air is thick with exhaust, the noise is deafening, and the cost of trucking in all that diesel fuel is just astronomical.
Not to mention the logistical nightmare of it all.
Right. So now imagine a startup founder walking into a high-stakes meeting with a panel of top-tier venture capitalists, looking them dead in the eye and saying, we can replace all of that with a silent, zero-emission power plant that just fits right in their backyard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then they add, oh, and it doesn't use a single chemical battery.
See, that is a claim that will usually get you laughed right out of a venture capital boardroom.
Really? Just dismissed outright.
Oh, yeah. VCs who specialize in deep tech and climate infrastructure, they're notoriously skeptical. I mean, they hear these wild, world-saving claims every single day.
Sure, everybody has a pitch.
Exactly. And when it comes to heavy physical hardware, their default answer is almost always a very polite no, because they are hunting for this impossible trinity, right? They want zero execution risk, massive global scalability, and flawless unit economics.
Which brings us to why today's deep dive is so compelling for you to listen to. We have this fascinating stack of internal strategy documents, pitch drafts, and unvarnished investor communications from a climate tech startup called Energetik Heart.
Right, which is built by a company called Stilar Energy.
Exactly. And the mission today is to decode their exact fundraising playbook. We really want to understand how they're positioning this radically new clean energy technology, how they handle intense pushback from top-tier European VCs, and the specific strategic pillars they use to build just an irresistible business case.
It's a masterclass in pitching, honestly.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this, because before we look at the millions of dollars in seed capital, we need to understand the actual machine. Like, what is Energetik Heart actually pitching here?
Right. So they have engineered a proprietary closed-loop micro-hydropower unit.
Okay, hydropower.
Yeah. But in their pitch materials, they refer to it as a portable river. It's designed to be deployed directly on-site at these industrial facilities, which the energy industry calls a behind-the-meter installation.
Behind the meter, got it.
Crucially, its main function is to provide 24/7 firm, baseload clean energy to heavy industry and mining.
I actually want to pause on that word baseload, because
Yeah.
that is the holy grail for industrial power.
Oh, absolutely. It's everything.
If you're running a giant factory, you can't just rely on a standard solar or wind farm. I mean, the moment a cloud rolls over, the wind stops.
Well, your entire production line shuts down, yeah.
Right, and you lose millions.
That is the core energy trilemma these heavy industries are facing right now. They desperately want to decarbonize, for ESG goals and public pressure, but they simply cannot afford intermittent power.
They need it always on.
Always. And traditionally, the only way to make solar or wind function like a baseload power plant is to pair it with a massive farm of lithium-ion batteries.
Which are not cheap.
Not cheap at all. They're incredibly expensive, they have limited lifespan, and mining the materials for them carries its own really heavy environmental footprint. But Energetik Heart is bypassing the chemical battery entirely.
And they're doing it with this closed-loop system.
Yeah.
But I guess, how does that actually work mechanically? Because when I think of hydropower, I'm picturing like the Hoover Dam.
Yeah, massive concrete walls, right.
Exactly. I think of blocking off giant natural rivers.
Right, but the mechanics here are fascinating because it's a hydraulic pneumatic system. So instead of damming a natural river, they create this artificial, highly pressurized environment inside a modular unit.
So it's all contained.
Completely contained. Water is continuously recirculated through the turbines to generate the electricity. And because it's completely closed off from the outside world, it doesn't consume any water.
Wait, none?
None. There is zero evaporation. It recirculates 100% of its hydric resource. So you don't need a local river, and you certainly aren't depleting any local water basins.
So it's basically like having a bespoke waterfall in your industrial backyard.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
You get continuous power without draining a lake or building some toxic battery farm. And looking at the sources, they aren't just sketching this out on a napkin. They've reached what the industry calls TRL6, Technology Readiness Level 6.
Right, which is a huge milestone.
Meaning they have a fully functional, validated pilot operating in a relevant environment. But, as I was reading through the pitch drafts, They don't seem to want to be viewed just as a hardware manufacturer.
No, not at all.
They lean incredibly hard into the software side. They frame the whole thing as a predictive AI platform.
And you've hit on the crucial differentiator there. I mean, if they were just selling a clever water pump, VCs would be interested, sure, but maybe not rushing to open their checkbooks.
Right, it's just another piece of heavy machinery.
Exactly. So Energetik Heart positions this as a smart energy management platform. The AI operates on two distinct, highly sophisticated layers. The first is AI-driven flow control.
Okay, I was trying to wrap my head around that part. How
Yeah.
exactly does software control the actual physics of rushing water?
Well, think about a massive industrial plant. Their energy use isn't just a perfectly flat line all day.
Right, things turn on and off.
Yeah, when a heavy crusher turns on, demand spikes. When a shift changes, demand drops. So the AI in the portable river uses advanced analytical models to read those fluctuations in real time.
Oh, so it knows exactly what the factory needs at any given second.
Exactly. And then it dynamically adjusts the internal pressure and the flow rate of the recirculating water. It's literally shaping the mechanical behavior of the water turbine to perfectly match the factory's fluctuating electrical heartbeat.
That is just brilliant. It's this bridge between a 5,000-year-old technology,
Yeah.
the water wheel, and modern machine learning.
It creates ultimate efficiency.
But what about the second layer of the AI?
Right. So the second layer focuses on predictive operations and health monitoring. If you're guaranteeing a mining company that your machine will power their critical operations 24/7 without a backup battery,
You really cannot afford a certain mechanical breakdown.
you absolutely cannot. So the system is packed with sensors feeding continuous telemetry data into a machine learning algorithm.
So it's monitoring like vibrations, temperature, pressure anomalies.
All of that. The AI can detect a microscopic change in a bearing's vibration and predict a mechanical wear and tear failure weeks before it actually happens.
Wow.
Weeks before.
Yeah, which allows the operators to schedule preventative maintenance during planned downtimes. And that's how Energetik Heart can guarantee a staggering 99.9% uptime, which completely changes the value proposition. And when they pitch this to impact-focused funds like Mutual's Impact, which is mentioned in the sources, they really emphasize the environmental knock-on effects.
Oh, the ESG angle is massive here.
Yeah, because by guaranteeing that uptime, they completely eliminate the client's reliance on backup diesel generators. The internal docs highlight this huge reduction in CO2, but also the elimination of particulate matter, specifically PM2.5 and PM10.
Right, the really dangerous stuff.
Exactly. Those are the microscopic toxic soot particles from diesel exhaust that cause severe respiratory issues in these mining communities. The air quality upgrade alone is a massive ESG victory.
It is a phenomenal environmental narrative. But environmental narratives don't survive contact with the market unless the economics are bulletproof.
Very true.
So what stands out to you when you look at how they engineered the business side of this technology?
I am so glad you asked, because the financial model is where my brain completely broke at first. I'm reading the pitch, right? And they are bragging about a zero CapEx model for the client.
Yeah. Zero upfront cost.
Yeah. So the heavy industry client pays absolutely nothing upfront for this massive, heavy, highly engineered infrastructure. I found myself pushing back on the document, just thinking, wait, if they install it for free, how does a startup survive giving away million-dollar power plants? Isn't that just financial suicide?
It sounds exactly like a fast track to bankruptcy until you look at the mechanics of the ES model.
Energy as a service.
Right. Energetik Heart is making a very deliberate shift in what they are actually selling. They are not selling the physical machine. They retain ownership of the hardware.
Oh, I see.
What they are selling is the continuous electricity that the machine produces.
Okay. So it's similar to how some residential solar companies will install panels on your roof for free, but you agree to buy the solar power from them at a fixed rate, just, scaled up to a massive industrial level.
That is a perfect analogy. They sign 10 to 15-year power purchase agreements, or PPAs, with these massive conglomerates. Energetik Heart finances and installs the technology so the client takes on zero upfront capital expenditure.
Right.
And in return, the client agrees to buy that continuous 24/7 energy over the next decade or more.
And for the client, this is a huge win. It transforms energy from this volatile, inflationary, nightmare-like, just hoping the price of diesel fuel doesn't spike next month.
Which it always does.
Right. It turns it into a completely predictable fixed line item on their balance sheet. The pitch actually claims this saves corporate clients 40 to 50% on their operational energy costs.
I mean, any CFO looking at a 50% reduction in energy costs with zero upfront investment is going to sign that contract yesterday.
Obviously.
But the real genius of the EBIT model is what it does for Energetic Heart's balance sheet. Because their closed-loop technology is so remarkably efficient and doesn't rely on purchasing external fuel to generate the power, their core profitability is just staggering.
The margins must be huge.
The documents project an operational EBITDA margin, meaning their profit on the energy sold before taxes and depreciation of 65% to 75%.
That is wild. Those are like software margins applied to heavy infrastructure.
Exactly. They are absorbing the upfront cost of building the unit, but in exchange, they're locking in a decade or more of incredibly high-margin, recurring, predictable revenue.
And VCs love that.
Venture capitalists absolutely drool over high-margin, recurring revenue.
But, okay, let me play devil's advocate here. To get to the point where you can even pitch a zero CapEx model to a VC, you have to actually build the working prototype, right?
Yeah, you need the hardware.
And the hardware research and development is brutally expensive. If they haven't raised institutional venture capital yet, how on earth did they afford to build a TRL-6 pilot?
The internal documents reveal a story of immense capital discipline by the founding team. The leadership, that's CEO Eduardo Tiravanti, COO Jacqueline Strzok, and Chief Data and Design Officer Purina Tiravanti, they played a very gritty, very patient long game.
They didn't just rush out for VC money right away.
No, they didn't rush out to raise money on a flimsy idea. Instead, they funded the initial research and development through internal cash flow from their existing traditional energy consulting business.
Wait, really? So they were essentially working their day jobs as energy consultants, taking those profits, I think the documents mentioned about $50,000 a year, and just funneling it directly into building this revolutionary turbine at night.
That's exactly what they did. And on top of that, they aggressively pursued non-dilutive capital. They successfully secured over $100,000 in non-reimbursable government grants from Pro-Innovate Peru.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah, and the COO, Jacqueline Strzok, managed the complex government audits for these grants with zero contingencies, which is incredibly difficult to do.
We really need to emphasize why this matters so much for anyone listening. Because they bootstrapped and used grant money, they walked up to the starting line of their seed round, owning 100% of the equity in their own company.
What's fascinating here is they had a completely clean cap table.
Exactly. I mean, usually by the time a hardware startup gets a working prototype, the founders have sold off like 50% of the company to angel investors just to buy steel and sensors.
Oh, easily half the company, yeah.
Right. So for a VC, seeing founders who still own the whole pie is a massive green flag. It means the founders are fully incentivized for the long haul.
It signals to the investors that this team respects capital. They know how to stretch every single dollar, how to navigate bureaucratic grant systems, and how to execute on complex engineering without just setting venture capital money on fire.
All right, so they have a brilliant predictive AI, they have a zero CapEx financial model that prints recurring revenue, and they have a pristine crap table. But if I'm a VC, I still have one massive glaring red flag.
The manufacturing.
Yes, hardware is famously, notoriously difficult to manufacture at scale. I would be sitting in that pitch meeting thinking, sure, you built a beautiful pilot in Peru using grant money, but what happens when you need to build 50 of these next year?
Right. Can you repeat it?
Exactly. What happens when quality control slips, a bearing shatters, and suddenly your 99.9% uptime guarantee is ruined?
Wow.
How do they alleviate that very real fear?
They do it by not trying to pretend they're going to become the world's greatest manufacturers overnight. Instead, they answer that fear with what might be the strongest strategic pillar in their entire playbook: their industrial alliance with Ausberger.
Okay, I saw that name in bold letters throughout the pitch drafts. Who is Ausberger, and why does this partnership matter so much?
So Ausberger is a highly respected legacy German engineering and manufacturing firm. Energetik Heart recognized that their own core competency is the AI, the fluid dynamics, and the business model.
The brains of the operation.
Right. So they outsource the heavy lifting. The agreement stipulates that Ausberger will provide, install, and mount the modular hydroelectric rooms directly at the client's site.
And crucially, the docs highlight that they do it under strict German DIN and ISO engineering standards.
Which is the absolute gold standard for industrial reliability globally. By bringing Ausberger in as a partner, Energetik Heart completely de-risks the manufacturing concern for the investors.
They don't have to build a factory.
Exactly. They don't have to raise $100 million to build a mega factory. They don't have to figure out global supply chain logistics from scratch.
So the VC looks at that alliance and realizes the execution risk of the actual hardware just dropped to near zero.
It's a brilliant move.
It's a masterstroke in strategic delegation. And this alliance leads perfectly into the actual mechanics of their fundraising. Let's look at the seed roadmap. They're currently out there raising a $1.5 million seed round.
And they're structuring it in a very founder-friendly way, using a safe pre-money agreement or a BSA, which is the equivalent instrument for European funds.
Right. For those who might not know, these are essentially agreements that allow investors to hand over cash now in exchange for the right to future equity when the company is officially priced in a later round.
Yeah, it's the standard vehicle for moving fast in early-stage deals. But what's really impressive is that they aren't just cold-calling investors. They already have a Danish fund named Kjoler committed as an anchor investor.
Having an anchor investor changes the entire psychological dynamic of a fundraising round.
It creates immediate validation.
And generates FOMO. Right. The fear of missing out among the other funds they're pitching, it proves that someone else has already done the due diligence and actually believes in the vision.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting. They're raising $1.5 million. But the internal communications state that this seed capital is specifically designed to deploy their first 1 megawatt industrial pilot and unlock a validated preoperative pipeline worth $500 million.
I know. Going from $1.5 million in seed funding to a $500 million pipeline sounds absurdly ambitious.
It sounds made up.
Right, until you look at the evidence backing it up. The sources show this pipeline isn't just wishful thinking. It is backed by 5 signed non-disclosure agreements and memorandums of understanding with Tier 1 industrial and mining conglomerates.
Yeah, they specifically mention heavyweights like Nexa Resources and Buenaventura,
Which are massive, incredibly energy-hungry corporations.
And this brings us right back to the ES model. Because the client doesn't have to pay anything up front, the friction to sign a massive long-term energy contract is incredibly low.
It's a no-brainer for the client.
Once that first 1 megawatt pilot is operational and proves the AI flow control works as promised, those MOUs turn into binding contracts very quickly. The demand is already sitting there, literally just waiting for the capital to unlock it.
So they have the revolutionary tech, they have the anchor investor lined up, they have the German manufacturing muscle, and they have a $500 million pipeline.
It sounds like a flawless victory.
It does.
But the real world of venture capital is full of invisible brick walls. And as we see in the investor emails, when Energetik Heart started pitching this flawless package to European VCs, specifically funds like Clementum Capital or Greencode, they slammed into a massive jurisdictional wall.
Ah, yes, the dreaded geographic mandate.
Yeah, what exactly is that?
Well, many European venture funds aren't just investing their own money. They're investing money on behalf of their limited partners, or LPs. Often those LPs include European government entities or regional pension funds.
Okay.
Because of this, the VCs have strict legal mandates. They're only allowed to invest in companies that are domiciled in Europe or companies that are deploying their initial primary projects within European borders.
So the VCs look at Energetik Heart. They see a Peruvian company with an initial deployment pipeline in the Latin American mining sector, and they say, we love the technology, the math is beautiful, but legally our hands are tied, we can't invest.
It is an incredibly frustrating rejection because it has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of the business.
Right, it's just red tape.
But the way the CEO, Eduardo Tiravanti, handles this pushback in the source emails is just a lesson in high-level founder resilience. He doesn't get defensive, and he doesn't just accept the rejection. He aggressively pivots the narrative.
I loved reading his responses. He writes back to these funds and essentially says, I understand your geographic constraints, but let me clarify our roadmap. While this seed round does unlock our initial pipeline in Latin America, our immediate next priority target market is Europe and specifically Spain.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to view this pivot in the context of global macroeconomics. He isn't just throwing a dart at a map of Europe.
Right.
He's acutely aware that Europe is currently navigating a severe existential energy security crisis. The cost of electricity for industrial players has skyrocketed, and the entire continent is desperately trying to untangle its heavy industry from volatile fossil fuel markets.
So by pointing directly at Spain and Central Europe, he's repositioning the startup. He isn't pitching a Peruvian mining solution anymore. He is pitching a zero-emission, baseload energy solution that acts as the exact medicine for Europe's most urgent industrial pain point.
Exactly. And he backs up this strategic pivot with the physical design of the technology itself. Because the potable river is completely modular and containerized, it's fundamentally geography agnostic.
It's not a dam permanently tethered to the Andes Mountains.
Right. It can be loaded onto a cargo ship and assembled in literally any industrial backyard on the planet. And because Osberger is handling the manufacturing, the European VCs know the hardware will already meet local European regulatory and engineering standards.
He neutralizes their geographic argument perfectly, but then he goes even one step further with what I would call the ultimate VC sweetener. He addresses the actual corporate structure head-on, offering complete flexibility.
This is where a lot of founders let ego get in the way, but this team shows remarkable maturity. In the emails, the CEO essentially tells the investors, if the only thing holding you back from writing a check is the name on the legal paperwork, we are fully prepared to establish a European holding entity.
Or a U.S. one, right?
Yeah, he says, or if you prefer U.S. structures, we will set up a Delaware C Corp based in Wilmington.
And for those who might not know, a Delaware C Corp is basically the universal gold standard for venture capital corporate structuring. It's a legal framework that investors trust implicitly.
It takes all the legal friction away.
He's basically saying, we can change the flag on the ship without changing the cargo. He removes every single administrative, legal, or geographic excuse for the VC to pass on the deal.
It is a profound demonstration of adaptability. They're communicating to the investors that they are not a regional science project tied to one specific locale. They view themselves as a global deep tech company, and they are willing to mold their corporate architecture to facilitate the fastest possible injection of capital.
It really is a masterclass in strategic positioning. Every single time a VC raises a red flag, whether it's the cost of hardware development, the risk of manufacturing, or the constraints of geographic mandates, Energetik Heart has a structurally sound, economically viable answer ready to fire back.
When you zoom out and look at all these components interacting together, the predictive AI flow control, the zero capex financial engineering, the modular German manufacturing, and the corporate adaptability, it raises a very important question. What is the broader takeaway here for the market?
So what does this all mean for you? Whether you are an entrepreneur preparing your own pitch deck, a corporate leader trying to champion innovation within your own company, or simply a curious mind trying to understand the actual messy mechanics of the global energy transition, this playbook is invaluable.
It really is.
It teaches us that winning in the future requires so much more than just a noble mission to save the planet or a clever piece of software.
It requires a relentless convergence of disciplines. You have to be an environmentalist, absolutely, but you also have to be a ruthless pragmatist. Energetik Heart figured out how to align the environmental necessity of eliminating toxic diesel with the corporate necessity of cutting operational costs, all while satisfying the venture capital necessity for outsized high-margin returns.
They took sustainability, which is often viewed as a sunk cost, and turned it into a highly profitable, scalable infrastructure play. And that leaves me with a final, somewhat provocative thought for you to mull over. We are so accustomed to thinking about energy in terms of massive, centralized systems.
Right. National grids, utility monopolies.
Giant power plants pushing electricity over thousands of miles of vulnerable wires.
The legacy grid model, basically.
Right. But think about the implications of the technology we just unpacked. If a fully modular, AI-driven, battery-free power plant can simply be dropped into any industrial backyard in the world, maintained by predictive software, and financed without any upfront cost to the user, what does that actually mean for the future of those massive centralized national grids?
It suggests the potential for a radical unwinding of how the world distributes power.
Are tomorrow's energy infrastructures going to be built by massive utility monopolies? Or are we moving toward a world where the grid is entirely decentralized, localized, and owned outright by the corporations and communities that actually consume the power?
That's the real disruption right there.
Back at the start, we talked about what it takes to walk into a room and convince the gatekeepers of capital to say yes. But maybe the ultimate goal of a startup like Energetik Heart isn't just to get venture capitalists to open their checkbooks. Maybe the true goal is to build a machine so undeniable that it rewrites the rules of the global energy grid entirely.
That is a staggering shift in perspective to walk away with.
It truly is. Until next time, keep diving deep.